إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فإنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد عباد الله، فإن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. I praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as He should be praised. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from our own evil doings. I bear witness that there is no true deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that the Prophet Mohamed sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his last and final messenger. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Protect yourself from the punishment and anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by performing what is obligatory upon you and refraining from what is prohibited. And do not die except in a state of submission and a state of Islam to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. O you who believe, have taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fear Him as He should be feared. And say the correct thing, say the truth. If you do so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would rectify and correct your actions. And whoever obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger, then he has already attained the ultimate success. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the best of speech is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran. And the best of guidance is the guidance of His Messenger Mohamed sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the worst of matters are newly innovated matters in this religion. Because whatever is innovated in this religion will lead you astray, and whatever will lead you astray will lead you to the hellfire. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, in the past few weeks, one could not help but notice that finally the atrocities that are happening in Myanmar towards the Rohingya is being talked about in the news. Although this has been going on for years, and perhaps what is surprising is even that many of the Muslims did not know about this until recently. Now the things that are happening, for some reason or another, reminded me of the incident that happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It was the time of the 4th year after the Hijrah, where the Muslims are starting to gather in the Medina, and this newly founded society, a Muslim ummah, is growing. It's still in young stages of growth, still small in number, being surrounded by many things that can endanger it. In fact, it was sought after to be taken and plucked out of the ground so that it would not be anymore. At that time of the 4th year of the Hijrah, an individual from Najd had come to the Prophet ﷺ with gifts and presents. And the Prophet ﷺ presented Islam to him, but he did not accept. However, he said, "Can I ask you to send some people with me, in a group of individuals, so that they would teach the people of Najd, perhaps they may accept Islam?" The Prophet ﷺ hesitated and he said, "Listen, I fear for these people." So this individual, his name is Amir ibn Malik, he said, they are in my protection. And at that time, when you put somebody in protection, it's a covenant, and it's a promise that is respected between every single tribe. And so it's almost as if it's a safe contract of safety, of protection. And so the Prophet ﷺ sent them. And he did not just send anybody, but however, he sent a group of Muslims of the best of that time. They were called the Qurra, the reciters. They spent their night praying and reciting the Quran and studying it. And the day they would work, they were lumberers, they would cut the trees and sell them and bring food for the Ahlul Sufa. To make things short, after they had left until they reached the well of Ma'una, Bi'r Ma'una. Unfortunately, what had happened was that there was a relative of Amr ibn Malik, the one who gave the covenant. In fact, it was his nephew. He had an animosity between him and the Prophet ﷺ, because the Prophet ﷺ did not comply and agree that he would divide the land between both of them. This man had come to the Prophet ﷺ and said, listen, I'll give you one of a few options. You get this territory, I get that territory. Whatever the case is. But the Prophet ﷺ refused. So this nephew of Amr ibn Malik, he had a problem with these group of Muslims. He had animosity. So what he did, he wanted to call his tribe to kill them. Now they refused because they are from the tribe of Amr ibn Malik who gave the covenant. But what he did was he went to the next door tribe, Bani Sulaym, and they answered his call and they butchered every single one of them. Of those Muslims. Cold-blooded. They did not have any equipment of warfare to protect themselves. That was not their intention. Complete act of treachery. Now the Prophet ﷺ, when he heard of this, when this came to him through wahy, he had informed the people, the Muslims at that time. And their emotional reaction was amazing. A true sense of brotherhood. The Prophet ﷺ remained an entire month in every single prayer, making dua al-qunut against those individuals who performed the act of treachery on the people of Bani Sulaym. It was the discussion of the entire ummah at that time. For an entire month, this was their concern, the matter that happened. The death of their brothers in cold blood. It was the topic of the hour, the discussion of the hour, every household, until the revelation came to the Prophet ﷺ to inform him that these people who have died have asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to inform them that they have met their Lord and that He is pleased with them and He is pleased with them. Now I want us to take a look at modern time. Whether we're going to start in the eastern part of the world, in Myanmar, the Rohingya, minority Muslims being persecuted, killed, burned, women raped, men decapitated, children thrown in the water and drowned and burnt. Let's move a bit to the northwest, the northeast western part of China. The Uyghur, minority Muslims. It is being legislated for their persecution, prevented from fasting, from building masajids, from wearing a hijab, killed, burned, women raped. Let's move to the west a bit further. We hit Syria, ethnic cleansing of the Sunnah, complete annihilation and moving out of the country. Move a bit south of it a little bit, Palestine. The world's largest open prison in the world. By the admission of just the non-Muslims, not by us, but the non-Muslims themselves, they admit this is the largest open-air prison in the world. All these places that I mentioned until this moment, they live in the most miserable conditions humanly possible. In fact, animal rights activists would not desire a dog or a cat to live in the same environment, in the same conditions, without electricity, pure water, or food. people are starving and dying of hunger. Let's move a bit further to Africa. The Central African Republic. Human Rights Watch is mentioning that there are entire groups of villages being erased from Muslims. Not just human beings, but their entire buildings are being annihilated completely, just to eliminate any traces of the presence of Muslims. So it seems that the same act of cold blood is perpetuated from one time of age to another. That's at the first look. However, there are differences. And this is what I want to talk about. There are differences between what happened at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And I'm going to touch on 2 points. In one, how the Muslims react. And 2, the reasons that enabled the persecution of these Muslims from back then and now. The first is, how is the reaction of the Muslims? If you look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, a beautiful embodiment of the verses of the Quran, that you are one nation. إِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةٌ وَاحِدَةٌ وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُونَ. One body. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ, verily Muslims are brothers and sisters, obviously, but they're brothers and sisters. They feel the pain of one each other. The Prophet ﷺ described this, and they acted this, and they showed it. They said, Rasulullah ﷺ said in Hadith Bukhari, by the narration of Mohamed al-Bashir, he said, تَرَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ فِي تَرَاحُمِهِمْ وَتَوَادِّهِمْ وَتَعَاطُفِهِمْ كَمَثَلِ الْجَسَدِ إِذَا اشْتَكَى مِنْهُ عُضْوٌ. What happens? سائر الجسد تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى. The Prophet ﷺ said, you see that the mu'mineen, the believers, among themselves in their mercy on one another, في تَوَادِّهِمْ, their love to one another, their emotional expression towards one another, تَعَاطُفِهِمْ, their sympathy towards one another, is like the one body. If a part of it feels ailment, the rest of the body is up at night in fever and ache. It feels one another. The Prophet ﷺ and the people of Medina at that time, they really felt the impact. So they reacted by what they could do at this time, is make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But how is our reaction as Muslims towards these atrocities? Are we even aware of them in the first place? Do we remember them? Do we feel that each brother that is being dismembered is our own brother? Do we feel that our own body are being dismembered? Do we feel that the blood is being shed, is being taken out of our own bodies or not? Do we feel that the sister that is being raped is our own sister or not? That this child that is being killed for no reason is our own son and young brother or not? How are we reacting to these things? It is sad. There's a huge difference. Do we remember them in our prayers, or we don't? Are we actively doing what is possible to help them in every single way or not? That is the first difference. Now the second difference is touching on what is the reason perhaps behind what is enabling these things to happen without anybody saying a word. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the answer is clear. There were only few in numbers of Muslims. Their strength is not yet strong enough to deter people from doing anything. But is this the case in our society, in this world, current world? Let me give you a piece of statistics. The number of Muslims in this entire world is approximately very close to 25% of the globe. 25%, dear brothers and sisters in Islam. That's a large number. We're talking about anywhere between 1.9, 1.8 to 1.9 billion Muslims. So we have no problems with numbers. And what's interesting is that this reason, the same reason I'm going to tell you, that the Prophet ﷺ even told us, is perhaps the same reason that we are not acting emotionally with the brotherhood bond that the Muslims acted on. The Prophet ﷺ told us clearly what would happen. He said in Sunan Abi Dawood, توشك الأمم أن تداعى عليكم كما تتداعى الأكلة على قصعتها. Prophet ﷺ said, and a time is approaching where the the nations, تداعى عليكم الأمم, will call each one another against you. They'll call one another, here, come. The Prophet ﷺ gave an interesting expression. كما تتداعى الأكلة على قصعتها. Similar to how you invite one another on a plate, on a meal. Now, I want you to pay attention to this description, because subhanAllah, it's almost exact and perfect. When you call somebody to a dish in a meal, it tells you how easy it is to grab that. Without any fear, without any worry, that this piece of meal that you're going to eat is not going to retaliate against you. It's doing nothing. It's something that is sitting there waiting for you to eat it. And it's a group of nations, not just one, multiple, from different races, religions, whatever the case is. And so one of the companions asked, قال قائل أمن قلة يومئذ ومن قلة يومئذ يا رسول الله. Is it because we are few in number? Because it would make sense if you're few in number and you're overpowered, it would make sense. But the Prophet ﷺ said, بَلْ أَنْتُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ كَثِيرٌ. However, at that time you're going to be large in numbers. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. However, you're going to be in large numbers, but you are the same as the froth and the foam on top of a flood. What does that mean? It means that although it's a lot, you see after a flood there's this foamy stuff. It's come on the top. The froth on the top. All it is just bubbles. You flick it, it bursts. It's useless. It does nothing. And then the Prophet ﷺ explains further. He said, وَلَيَنْزَعَنَّ اللَّهُ من صدور أعدائكم المهابة منكم وَلَيَقْذِفَنَّ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ الْوَهْنَ. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would remove from the chests of your enemies the fear towards you, which means they would not fear you. Now go back to the description, calling to a meal. There is no fear left. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would remove the fear from their chests towards you. And the opposite, He would install fear in your hearts and wahan. Wahan in the Arabic language means weakness. But one of the companions said, وَمَا الْوَهَنْ? What is wahan? Referring to what is the cause of all this. This is the reason we're talking about. The Prophet ﷺ said, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا وَمَخَافَةُ الْمَوْتِ. The love of this world and fear of death. So let's pause at this for a second. Love of this world. If you love something, you grow attached to it. If you love something, you want to decorate it. You want to build it. You want to show it off. Isn't this what's happening to the Muslims in this world? The majority, I'm not talking about every single person. There's always exceptions, your brothers and sisters in Islam. There's always exceptions. But what matters is the majority. Let's look at the majority of the adults and the youth. What are they preoccupied with? Is it the matters and the affairs of the Muslims? Is it learning their religion? Is it understanding the Quran? Or is it the football game, the soccer game, the cricket game, the latest fashion, the latest phone, the latest movie, what the star did, latest album of musician, what did he marry to? Who did he marry? What did she do? Did you hear about the scandal? Look at how many likes I got. This is what we care about. What's worse is when you go to certain countries, you just see it. That's it. We're so engrossed in our worldly lives. We love it so much that we forgot to build our hereafter. And this is why we fear death. We forgot our purpose in life. It's completely in the back of our heads. And if we remember it, it's for a quick few minutes for the prayers. And when performed, it's performed hastily with the back of our minds, let me finish to continue what I was doing. And so what are we building? We're building something transitional, temporary. We know that we're all going to die. Listen, if something is imminent, then it is already here. If we are going to die, then for all purposes, in reality, we are dead. So what did we plan for it? What did we as parents install in our future generations? Did we install in them it's important and more important to educate yourself worldly and become the doctor and the engineer and the nurse and the computer scientist? It's okay, the Quran is leave it for later. Islamic studies, don't worry about it for now. Focus on your, to become wealthy, to get a good, house, to marry the right person. Our priorities are lopsided. I'm not saying to ignore the worldly things, but to have a balance. We are sent to build this world, but for our hereafter. To build it so that it would serve us, not us serve it. When this happens, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, when we become so attached to something, we don't want to leave it. But whether we like it or not, we will leave it. So if we bear this in mind, you'll find that when you go back to the proper practices of Islam, you're truly going to start sensing the sense of brotherhood. Perhaps we might react. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. أما بعد. The Prophet ﷺ had mentioned in a narration that is weak, however the meaning is true. The Prophet ﷺ said, whomever is not concerned with the affairs of the Muslims, then he's not among them. It is true. Because if our Islam calls for brotherhood, and we don't care about the affairs of our brotherhood, our brothers, are we practicing brotherhood? When Islam tells us that we are one nation, an entire single body, when we do not care about our other parts of the body, are we practicing what we're supposed to be practicing? It just means we're another body. So the question is, what can we do now? One of the most important things we do is to educate ourselves of what is going on in these different countries. To make it a purpose that we discuss it with our family, in our dinner, casual conversations. So that when we meet each other as friends, we discuss it, we bring it up, we keep it alive. So that it would be something that is of a community affair. So that we would be able to educate the others and make it more of a national discussion. When somebody asks what's going on, you speak to them. If they don't know, bring it up. Do you see what's going on in the news? But make sure you know the facts so that you're able to establish what is going on in terms of facts so that you can win their opinion. When something is more of a national discussion, it has a weight to it. This is more on an individual basis. Of course, before that, by the way, the least we can do is remember them in our dua. That is the bare minimum. At the time where we don't know what else to do. But there is stuff we can do. And I mentioned, make it more of a public opinion. If you have means of perhaps maybe being more creative, designing a documentary, writing an article, an essay, a poem. I'm talking about also the young ones. An essay in English. Sometimes you're free to write whatever you want. A presentation of currently what's going on. That will have an impact on your peers. I'm going to give you another statistics of why this is important. Did you know that the median age of Muslims around the world is 24 years? Now this tells you that the majority of the Muslim population are young, which means they have more interaction and impact with other young individuals who might be non-Muslims. And so if they are actively discussing these matters, they're able to sway the large opinion of the public, of the non-Muslims. They will have a sense of what is going on. And that perhaps that future generation is the ones that are able to place legislations and change things for the better. But we still can write the poetry and the articles. If you're able to mobilize and gather and put some pressure in the legal ways possible, talking to the whatever ambassador or sending to whatever senate or whatever the case is, find the means. I may not have all the answers, but collectively, if we brainstorm, and this comes from discussing with one another, we can come up with something to help our brothers and sisters. Rather than them feeling that nothing is happening, they feel left out. And believe me, what goes around, comes around. We might face the same thing. Now, by the way, this is not far from the truth. Go down to the south of Florida. All of a sudden, many people became homeless. It's not necessarily somebody's doing it, but it's something that happens. Allah decreed it would happen. And what's even more interesting is that you'll find some of the Syrian families who were being persecuted and left out were among the people who were taking in the homeless from that flood into their houses. Because they know how it is. They felt it, they've seen it, they've been there, and they know it can happen again. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us for our shortcomings. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect all the oppressed around the world. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to unify between our hearts. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to harmonize between our hearts and strengthen our bonds and to blind us against our differences, the things that would break our connection. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us to the straight path and allow us to remain on the straight path. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring all of us back to this religion in the best way possible. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us what is beneficial for us and to benefit us with from what we learn. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring us back to the Quran and to practice the Quran, to walk in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات اللهم ارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم نعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذ به نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وقوموا إلى صلاتكم الحمد